What's going on, traders? Andrew O'Connell here with Pristine Capital, coming at you with yet another market recap video. It's February 7th, 2022, another crazy day of action. Before we get into this recap, quick first disclaimer, nothing in this video should be construed as investment advice or recommendations. Please follow your own trading plan and your own risk parameters. And last but certainly not least, do not YOLO your entire account into any one of my trades or anyone's trades for that matter. All right. These market indices, let's run through. This was some pretty wonky price action today. We had the S&P 500 as measured by the SPY finishing down 0.32%. NASDAQ QQQ was our big loser for the day, down 0.8%. Small caps actually finished positive, up almost 0.5%. Dow Jones was flat, and the ARK Innovation ETF had spurts of greatness throughout the day. At one point, this thing was up almost like 3%. And closed just a smidge down 0.37%. What's very interesting is that the volatility for these indices, including the ones that finished down on the session, also finished down, and that is a positive divergence. And then another divergence that we had here was that the breadth overall in the market finished positive. And you might say, hey, no, it didn't really finish positive. We only had 51% advancers in the SPY and 39% advancers in the Qs, which is actually negative. But for the most part, when I'm looking at breadth of the market, take a look at the number of advancers and number of decliners here. The small caps actually make up most of the stocks in the market. So you can have a situation where, the NASDAQ is only really 101 names. So not really that many, but these small caps, it's about 2,000 stocks. And of course, the S&P 500, just over 500 stocks. So overall, more stocks in the market today went up than down. But what you'll notice is that the stocks that really matter to the overall market and the S&P 500, they pretty much all finished down. And those are the FANG stocks. We had Microsoft down 1.63%, Google down 2.86%, pretty much filled the entire gap from earnings. Facebook, another day of selling. Tesla down as well. So yeah, all of these big mega cap tech names saw some selling. Let's pull up these charts real quick just to see what we are working with here. All right, let's take a look. We will go over to our toss. So let's take a look at Google, for instance. Google finished down 2.85%, pretty heavy selling. And originally, the first day after this reported earnings, we got a nice gap up, but sellers stepped in and sold the strength. And then ever since then, it's really just been 4 days of selling in Google stock. We actually broke below this monthly value area high. We are still above the 20-day simple moving average though. So we'll have to see, when do these sellers actually run out of ammo, if ever? Do we retest this bottom of value? It's very ambiguous, but it does show just how jittery market sentiment is, that any sign of strength, if sellers are just stepping up and selling right into it. Facebook as well, this is another larger component of the S&P 500. There's no real bottom in sight. We finished down another 5.14%. I had a position on in Facebook that I put on for a bounce trade. I actually took that off on Friday, and I am glad that I did. This thing still looks very weak. There's still more sellers there. And let's take a look at some of these others. Microsoft, because these are really the most important names if you're interested in the actual overall S&P 500. Microsoft also, this was the candle after it reported earnings and also had a nice gap up higher, and the gap was pretty much sold into. We are trading currently higher than where we were the day after earnings, which I guess is okay, glass half full, but we just cannot get above that 20-day simple moving average or this monthly point of control. So there are active sellers out there that are taking any sign of strength and they're just selling right into it. All right, let's take a look at these right here. This is Beto. We can talk about this in a moment. Okay, let's pull up our heat map again. So yeah, selling in all of those areas, but there were some areas of strength today. So we had travel names, which were pretty strong. Let's go through all of these themes. So take a look at this group of travel stocks. So Expedia, I've tried this one a couple times. This one has had a bunch of shakeouts, But Expedia looks like there's a volatility contraction going on here, where we had a deep correction, got right back up to that pivot, and then a very shallow correction. So Expedia looks very interesting, and really the whole group is looking pretty nice. We have Marriott, which is above value, Hyatt, which I believe is just Hyatt Hotels, not above value, but above this monthly point of control. So all these names are setting up pretty nicely. We also have the banks. Take a look at XLF above the 20-day moving average. One stock that is really standing out is Morgan Stanley. Take a look at this one. It's above this monthly value area, looking very strong. And look at this weekly chart. Weekly looks very compelling. We are on the cusp of a yearly value area breakout. So I'm actually going to set an alert up here just in case it does it tomorrow. But yeah, these aren't like the sexiest areas of the market. It's really the financials. Some healthcare stocks are also looking pretty good. So let's look at this XLV. Yeah, XLV actually finished negative, but this was one of the names on our Pristine Capital weekend watch list. Sent this out to members on Sunday morning. Yeah, this ABC looks very positive. Look at all these green candles here. So it's just some of the more conservative names that are seeing accumulation. Those big FANG stocks, though, they're definitely seeing some distribution. Let's go over these other sectors and see what we find. So energy remains very strong. XLE finished up 1.28%. China's in our number 2 momentum slot, but there were some bad headlines around Alibaba. The headline was that SoftBank may be selling its stake in the company. I actually had a position on in Alibaba. I closed it out. And occasionally that happens where you just get a bad headline that hits your position. But take a look at this. So this actually got me out of my Alibaba. It also got me out of my China ETF exposure as well, because Alibaba makes up about 10% of the China Internet ETF. So it's very tough for that whole group to do well if Alibaba is struggling. No, this stock did not make a lower low, but that headwind alone was enough to just take me out of my position. So I stopped out of that one literally on the open, and we ended up, just continuing to cascade throughout the session. So a lot of false moves. Really anything that's showing some strength, is really having a tough time following through for one reason or another. This MSOS cannabis ETF actually moved into our number 3 momentum slot. So let's take a look at that. This MSOS has been taken to the woodshed about 10 times over. And it's up 2.4%, actually finished above this 20-day simple moving average. And you can see very high volume on the candle Friday. And yeah, this thing, the trend looks horrible. But overall, hey, we're above that 20-day moving average, so maybe this is a bit of a trend reversal. And it's showing some relative strength versus some of these other areas of the market. Another area that's now showing nice relative strength is crypto. So let's pull up our Bitcoin chart here. Take a look at this. So we've had a couple of positive headlines around Bitcoin, and the first one that came out today, I actually got long this BITO ETF on Friday. I believe it was Friday. Let me take a look here. So this was my entry. Oh, it was actually February 4th. Yeah, so Friday. This is the Bitcoin ETF. Sent this out to all Pristine Capital members. We're breaking above the 20-day SMA on high volume. No one knows what the catalyst is, but the price action is saying that there could be one we don't know about yet. And that catalyst was actually revealed today. And it was that Kpmg added Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And I think this is very significant for this asset class as a whole, because so far we've had Tesla add Bitcoin to its balance sheet, and that was a big step forward. But I think most investors, they're kind of like, Elon Musk, he's a visionary, he's a pie in the sky thinker, he's a risk taker. You can still chalk it up to like, oh, crazy Elon, this thing's probably going to go to zero, but he put it on the company's balance sheet. What a risk taker. Whereas Kpmg, they're like an accounting and auditing firm. They're about as conservative as it gets, and they're adding it to their balance sheet. So could there be future announcements where other companies start to go, hey, why did Kpmg do that? Let's see what they did. And maybe they do some digging, do some investigating, They see Bitcoin's well off the highs, and maybe they do the same thing. With an asset like Bitcoin, it's a very low float asset. So you can get very wild price moves, as we can see, to the downside and the upside. But now we're above this 50-day moving average. I actually added to my Bitcoin position today. So definitely seeing some divergences in the market where some areas are doing great, other areas not so much. Style factors, we had our high beta style factor finish up 0.64%. That's very risk on. And then what was weak? We had growth was weak, defensives were weak as well. So overall, I think that's not bad if you see defensive selling off most of all. Yeah, high beta strong. What else was strong here? And then the second strongest was international value, but definitely a mixed board on these style factors. Seasonality. Seasonality, we're in the beginning of February, about the first week is done. Historically, there's this bump into the middle and back 9 of February, but then the seasonality, these first 3 months are very tough. So this choppy market environment, volatile market environment, this could be here to stay for quite a while longer. Top priority is just preserving mental capital and not getting chopped up. And I must say today I actually got a bit chopped up in my trading, but it happens. All right, let's take a look here at the indices. S&P 500. So again, volatility ended up finishing lower today, down 1.55% on this VIX, but we're still just kind of range bound here. The VIX was lower and the VVIX was also lower, down 0.61%, but the S&P 500 finished lower. And I will say I definitely got faked out today. There was a false breakout in the S&P 500 that I bid on. So look at this. On our 5-minute chart, we basically made it, we had a nice move. I believe it was, this was Friday's action. Then we cascaded lower. And then here we were, we made these lows. Then we ripped higher. It looked like this was a breakout of the daily value area. Nice breakout candle. And then there was aggressive selling into that breakout. So that is the characteristic of a weak market, where if you get a security up to where it's breaking out, you'll pull in a lot of buyers. And those buyers can be used to sell into. So that's what we saw today in the S&P 500. Very violent action. And I got shaken out of a few things on the lows here. Then I added into this breakout, and then, this thing really just got hit into the close. Then look right here. Then we had a really big high volume candle that pushed us higher off these lows. So in terms of this action, it's really just range bound, choppy action. And again, preserving that mental capital is of the utmost importance. Talk about ambiguity. Look at this. So on our daily chart, we're just riding this 20-day moving average lower. And heading into today's session, given that we failed at the 20-day on Friday, I was like, hey, we might get a gap down lower today. This could be where the bottom just falls out. We did not get that. And we're just continuing to ride this 20-day moving average. And here's what's interesting. And here's where the rubber meets the road. Depending on how tomorrow's action goes, we could very easily, it wouldn't take us a big move to get above the 20-day moving average and pull in a lot more buyers. But on the other hand, we have this 200-day moving average below us, and we're below this monthly point of control. So we also have to contend with the possibility that we make it back to this 4309. So this is a very ambiguous tape. And we're seeing some positive divergences as well as some negative divergences. So I would say this isn't a period where I feel like, oh my gosh, I have such an edge trading here. This is incredible. Not really. My trend model actually went out at a -1 today. But we are seeing heavy dark pool buying still. So the Squeeze Metrics DIX just came out. And for February 7th, we registered a reading of 46.3. So these dark pool buyers have been very active over the past week or so buying the dip. Other thing that you can see here is the dealer gamma went down to about 1 billion. And this, in terms of this dark index signaling, this is actually a very bullish place to be, where dealer gamma is very close to 0 and you have these very high DIX prints. So the price action, very ambiguous. We are seeing a nice edge from this dark index. So I think the only thing we can really do is just wait it out, see what happens, and make sure that you're not taking aggressive risk, and make sure that your mental capital is not diminishing. Let's take a look at some of my trades for the day. And I already talked about a few of these. Let's go to the stock trade. So to start the day, I closed out 40% of my CF position. The remaining 40%. This ended up being a nice trade for me. 3-star trade. Took it out for 75.34. I'd paid 71.30. And CF, I just had a feeling from the pre-market action that these growth stocks could end up leading. So I sold this thing on the open, and that pretty much ended up being, not the high of the day, but pretty close, a favorable price to sell at. So this ended up working out. This was a good sell. I got long MP, and this one, definitely a heartbreaker here. I got long MP, threw some size on this. And MP in the morning, again, remember we had that shakeout. MP was pretty strong in the shakeout, turned a little bit weak, basically went back to my buy point. I actually stopped out for basically a scratch, a very small winner, but MP ended up finishing out pretty strong above this 200-day moving average. So just comes with the territory. Sometimes in these really shaky markets, you're going to end up stopping out of something that ends up moving higher. So this one, I'll have to see what MP does in the future, but just kind of like a tough tape to trade in. And then because of this Alibaba, I actually closed out of my CWeb. Closed out of this one for 11.71. I had paid 12.78. And I said the SoftBank Baba sale announcement is not good for this ETF given the high weight of Baba. And also I saw what was going on in crypto, and I was like, I want to be pushing my money into the best hands. So let me take it out of the CWeb, which now is a bit compromised. And I ended up adding that into GBTC. So yeah, crypto still remains strong. I already had a position in the Bitcoin futures ETF, and then I added into that GBTC today. And then options trades. So take a look at this. Basically had a SPY trade, pretty much scratched this, like 10-cent loser. Alibaba. This was the one I stopped out of. Stopped out of this at 9:32 a.m. So pretty much right on the open. Stopped out of this for 7.65. I'd paid 12.65. So this is just part of the game. Sometimes you get hit by a bad headline, and the worst thing that you can do is just hang in there and be like, oh, it'll come back or whatever. But there's almost always a better use of your capital than keeping your money in something where bad headlines are hitting and the price action is weak. Tesla took this for a day trade. Took some February 18th 9:45 calls, and I hit a nice winner in Tesla to start the day. So I added this Tesla position at like 9:32, and a few minutes after I was able to close this out for 43.61. I'd paid 35.36. So I put here lock down a reasonable profit. Then a few minutes later, I rolled this position out. Tesla actually came in a bit. So I was like, okay, let me roll my position. I already have a nice trade in this one. I got long these 970 calls for 30.55. These expire February 18th. And Tesla really just proceeded to roll over throughout the remainder of the session. So Tesla finished down 1.73%. Definitely, it looked like we were going to get a breakout on this hourly time frame. We actually did get one. So initially when I made my purchase, purchased somewhere around here, those options contracts, and I sold into the strength of this breakout, which was great. Then I ended up buying on the retest of this weekly value area high, but we really just cascaded throughout the session. So Tesla stuck in value on this hourly time frame, and on this daily time frame we are seeing the same. It looked like we might get a nice breakout out of this little channel we've been in, or I don't want to say channel, really just like this trading range. But that breakout, along with these other FANG names, was sold into. It looks like in the after hours we are trading up slightly though. So let's see, we have that, and then here was the one that I got shaken out of. So I put on the SPY 455 February 18th calls for 388. I put here size small enough to allow this to work if it wants to. So I wanted to make sure this is a short-term trade. Make sure I'm size small enough that it's not really going to hurt me either way. I stopped out of this one intraday for 301. And then we got that breakout higher, so I added these back for 362. So by the end of the day, you know, these were trading much lower than 362 because the SPY turned negative. But these also, you know, size small enough where I can just leave them on. And I'm seeing these positive divergences. So I want to make sure that I'm not just like into a position into strength, stop down on weakness, and just continuing to do that. But I would say today, some good moments in my trading, some good sells, but also getting chopped around a bit. I'd say today was one of the tougher trading sessions for me. All right, let's take a look at our VigTech options order flow. And let's check it out here. So we have our VigTech. Let's see this options order flow and see if we can get some clues here. So we have Tesla, which is in our top slot. Only 1.7 billion of flow. It's actually a pretty light day for Tesla. And let's take a look at our tradescape. So SPX, wow, a lot of call premiums going up. Uh-oh. So we have these June 2023. These are at the 1200 strike. It's tough to tell what these are actually for, to be honest. Let's see, we have Tesla, a lot of mixed action. Remember, Tesla does have about 2 billion of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So if Bitcoin is strong, that can help them. Facebook, a lot of put buying. Google, a lot of call buying into the weakness. That's interesting. This DWAC, I think this is back in play. This is like a meme stock. It's the Trump social media company. Let's take a look. I'm sure that's very polarizing. I'm sure some people are like, DWAC's going to the moon. And other people are like, DWAC is going to zero. You know, for me, it doesn't really matter. This actually looks like the technical pattern doesn't look so bad. But again, this is a meme stock. So it's one of those where unless you hit it dead on, you can really get into some trouble. And I believe this thing, yeah, this is certainly a bubble. This thing went public, you know, it's a SPAC. So it went public at like 10 bucks. Yeah, 10 bucks a share. And then it spiked. Oh my gosh, it's trading at 83, 88. Geez, so for context, out of, you know, the major SPAC winners from 2020 and 2021, take a look at this. So like MP, this was a huge SPAC winner, a smashing success. And this, of course, IPO'd at 10 bucks. And now it's at 37.57. So this, albeit it's one of the biggest winners, you know, it's less than half of what DWAC is. DraftKings, this was another one of the big SPAC winners. IPO'd at 10, trading at 21.50. This IPOE, or no, now it's not IPOE anymore. Now it's SoFi. Another big SPAC winner. Now it's only at 11.72. So I would venture to say this is probably overvalued because it's literally like the unicorn out of a sea of SPACs. So I think some investors are likely going to get hurt on this, but in terms of where it goes in the near term, you know, who really knows? It's showing relative strength. So if you're a trader, you know, go ahead, knock yourself out. Let's see what came up for this one. It's just so hard. Let me see. DWAC. We have June calls going up at the 40 strike. We have these February calls going up at the 25 strike. Yeah, it's just so difficult, honestly, with these SPACs, because like it's obvious this thing is a bubble, but I don't want to like offend anyone if they're like, you know, if they're like a huge fan of Trump or whatever, or if they hate Trump or whatever. So I'm just not going to talk about DWAC. I feel like that one is probably pretty polarizing. All right. Snapchat, which I currently have a position in, a lot of mixed options order flow, and we'll go to one more because this is getting pretty long. Okay, AMD, this is another one reported pretty good earnings, I must say. I thought they were great considering I'm not like a semiconductors analyst, but they beat estimates by a really wide margin. And AMD, it's above the 20-day moving average, which is good, I took a shot on this one a few days ago. But again, we're just seeing, it's almost like there's a lid on these FANG stocks where they're just being sold, kind of being, you know, really just suppressed. It's manipulation. No, I'm kidding. No, it's not manipulation. It's never manipulation. I see people say that all the time on social media, like it's being manipulated lower. And I think that's just, you know, it's just funny when people say that. I never really think that. The market's always right. But yeah, Google, AMD, all those stocks, they're really being pinned down. So that about does it for this market recap video. Again, just make sure you're keeping your sanity out there, maintaining your composure. And if things aren't really working, you know, just take a step back and maybe slow up a little bit on the trading. That's probably what I'm going to do tomorrow. Hey, I got chopped up today a little bit. So let me wait for some confirmation. See if we get above this 20-day moving average or see if we finally get our breakdown. All right, guys, have a great night. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all tomorrow.